welcome back to another episode of Soulful Feast, bite-sized information to nourish your body, mind, and spirit. Now, let's talk about the big elephant in the room, Mercury retrograde. I think it's like the phrase that can make people like quake in their heels and just sort of like, oh my gosh, I don't want to do anything. I'm freaking out. And they blame everything on Mercury retrograde. But we're here to break it down. I used to be so afraid of it. And frankly, when you understand what it means and how you can harness its energy in a good way, it's not as scary as you think. So we're here today with this radiant soul who I connected with totally only online, but super love her vibes. She's a common friend of a friend of ours, and she is a mystic teacher and intuitive healer. Her name is Coco Alexandra. Hi, Coco.
Hi, thanks for having me, Steph.
Yes, thanks so much for joining us from Hong Kong. So Coco, tell us a little bit more about your practice first before we dive into like Mercury retrograde.
Yeah, absolutely. So I teach a lot of different modalities because in human design mathematics, learning all the things and finding my own way to share that back into the community and for those who are open to it. So some of that includes intuitive healing, different modalities like Akashic Records. So I teach a certification course for that, as well as soul coaching. I teach a certification for that too, as well as Holy Fire, Karuna Reiki, and I do a lot of retreats and workshops and one-on-one and group sessions. So I do all the things.
I love
And I
it.
think coming from 20, yeah, I think also coming from 20 years of PR marketing background, that kind of really helps facilitate all the background planning and it just really, brightens my soul. So I'm really happy to be doing what I'm doing and sharing it with the world.
Fantastic. Well, let's dive into the topic, right? So tell us a little bit more about Mercury retrograde. Why is it so scary and what is it exactly?
I get this all the time. I think every single time we're about to lean into Mercury retrograde, someone in my DM is like, "Oh no," and I get it, because it's quite common during Mercury retrograde for things to feel a little bit not in flow
Yeah.
and for things to kind of go haywire a little bit. So the planet of Mercury governs our communication, technology, travel, right? And it goes retrograde in different zodiac signs each time, right? And so this Mercury retrograde lands on November 25th to December 25th.
Yeah.
And it's in the sign of Sagittarius, right? And so I think it's also important to know that it's not just those few weeks. We also have a pre-shadow period, which is normally like 2, 3 weeks ahead. So we're actually in pre-shadow phase already. And then we have a post-shadow phase, which is also 2 to 3 weeks,
That's
right?
where it always
And
slaps me,
so
actually. It's the
I
post
was
shadow
mentioning
phase. It's always like, oh,
yeah,
we're
it's
out of the
different
woods.
for everybody. And you're like, nope, just kidding.
Yeah.
Yeah, it has a way of doing that. So I think the good thing is that, the astrology is always there. It's always teaching us something. And I think it's a great like preventative tool as
Mhm.
well. So there's really not much to be afraid of because if you know that those themes are coming up, then you can come up with a coping plan. You know what I mean? And so, yeah, it is quite common during Mercury retrograde for miscommunication, mishaps, like rescheduling of things
Yeah.
or, saying something too soon before thinking and then creating some like little electric moments between people. Or maybe, in the workplace, maybe instead of BCCing everyone, someone accidentally CCs everyone, you know what I mean? It's those minor things. And then in terms of travel, there might be like travel delays. So, if you drive or if you're going to point A to point B, just leave a little bit more time in between everything to have like a time buffer. And in regards to technology, right? So
Mm,
this is where, technical glitches begin happening. So it's always wise to kind of just back up everything, save things a few times before closing out. And if you know it's that season, then just give yourself some extra buffer room and grace and just breathe, lean into your breathing practices so you don't get frazzled when those moments pop up, right? And so this Mercury retrograde falls in Sagittarius. And so
mhm.
Sagittarius is the zodiac sign that's all about, travel, exploration, learning, optimism versus realism,
Yeah.
communication versus misunderstandings, right? And so those are some things to really look out for, but obviously you'll need to see where this retrograde is hitting in your personal birth chart. I think it's best to check like for your rising sign to see what themes are
Mm,
more personalized to you.
yeah.
And so, yeah, I think that's just kind of the upcoming Mercury retrograde in hindsight.
For me, like in general, I tend to use it as a time to slow down, right? Like just sort of like take a pause, be non-reactive and kind of like reflect. And even in terms of like events and work and things like that, especially during the holiday season, which is already so like jam-packed with work, year-end work commitments, and then all your like birthday parties, and everyone's like holiday get together, sorry. And I mean, for me, it's also my birthday, Scorpio. So, just sort of like all this stuff
Oh,
happening.
happy birthday season.
Yeah. So all this stuff happening, it's like very intense, right? And it's a reminder actually to just take a pause and slow down and kind of go inward. And it's a great reminder also to reflect on the end of the year and to kind of like plan ahead and not kind of charge full steam ahead. As every time there's like a Mercury retrograde, I take it as a sign to sort of like reflect and go inwards. So what are some of like the coping skills that people can have, when let's say like just really like practical things, in general, let's say when things are really at the height of it and on the fritz, or like again miscommunications, like what are some of the tips that we can share with the audience?
I think that's a great question. I think you touched upon it a little bit just now. So, I know that a lot of people during Mercury retrograde, they tend to the first response is to freak out and be like, "Oh
Mhm.
no, everything's gonna blow up." But actually, Mercury retrograde, as you said, is a really good time to review, reassess, and realign. It's kind of like a more inward energy, right?
Mm,
And so just really kind of taking everything a few notches down and slowing everything down versus your normal standard speed of life. You know what I mean? And I personally like it when Mercury retrograde comes at the end of the year because, as you mentioned earlier, like, yeah, there are a lot of, family things that we're doing, maybe travel plans, etc. So it is kind of like helping us, like planetary wise, to kind of just take things slower and
yeah.
enjoy the moment, and kind of tune into the smaller things in life and really evaluate, like, okay, this worked, this didn't. How do I want to move forward in the future to align myself deeper into what it is that I now desire that maybe is different from before?
Yeah, absolutely. So what are the signs that are probably most affected in this particular season? You said it's coming into
Well,
Sagittarius, so what are the signs right now that are that really kind of have to watch out?
definitely Sagittarius. And if you have heavy Mercury placements in your chart, that will probably
Mhm.
hit you stronger as well. So Gemini, because Gemini is ruled by Mercury. But if you actually had Mercury retrograde at the time of your birth, like myself, actually
Oh,
retrograde season might not really affect you as much. And actually, it might help you more because that was the time you were born. So you're more kind of attuned to that energy.
I see. Okay, so look, I think, as one of the things that I like to do is also take the grounding practices more seriously, like some breath work, really like that more meditation, journaling, and in general, like trying to connect a little bit with nature or just having those really quiet moments, which is very hard during this
Mm,
holiday season. And I think one of the things that really helped me is really taking a pause before you speak to people, even in a party or like maybe, which is kind of hard to do when you're like drinking and stuff. So I actually cut back on the alcohol during like Mercury retrograde. So you're not like saying random stuff and verbal diarrhea and it can get like misconstrued. So really just being more intentional, right? With the people you hang out with, the events that you give your energy to, um and and that sort of you know kind of being more purposeful. Is there anything else that we should be watching out for towards the end of the year, like any kind of other cosmic happenings?
Actually, next year we have a lot of planets changing zodiac signs. So Saturn, Uranus, Neptune. And I don't want to talk too much about that because I don't want to kind of make people think that, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? Okay. But that is quite an uncommon thing to have so many of those planets that don't
Okay.
change signs as frequently to change. So that would, you really need to look at your personal chart to see kind of what that means for you specifically. But I feel it's good for a lot of people, which is
Mm.
great. But one thing I wanted to bring up as well from Mercury retrograde is signing legal contracts,
Oh yes,
or
yeah.
just any type of agreements during Mercury retrograde. It doesn't mean that you can't contract during this time or buy a new house or whatever. It just really means to take your time to review everything super carefully, read between the lines, you know what I mean, and make sure that you're not just skimming through it and then putting your signature
Mm.
on it, you know what I mean? Because it might come bite you back in the bum later down the line.
Yes, absolutely. I really like I really avoid it actually in general if I can push it off a bit. But yeah, again, it's just taking pause and slowing down. Maybe let's talk a little bit about astrology in general. There are people who are for or against or in between and kind of like, you know, hang on to everything and like plan their life too much, around it and take it as like that's. So what is your advice in terms of like how do you relate to or advise people to like relate to the movements of the planets and the energies that arise?
Well, in my opinion, obviously, I'm not going to, persuade everyone to be like, you have to trust and believe, like this is the holy grail. But I personally, I'm very, very aligned to the energies. And even if you look ahead of time, even from now until like 2 years, 10 years later, there are a lot of synchronicities and signs that you can kind of pick up on so that you can work towards aligning better to those energies and you kind of know what to expect, right? And so I don't know about you, but I always book my annual energy readings and astrology readings with my personal astrologer, and to just kind of note the key dates that are best for you because the
Mm,
astrology is always there, right? It's not a new modality. It's been
yeah.
around for 5,000 years. A lot of different cultures, a lot of different countries have been using it for
Hmm.
eons. Kings, emperors, dynasties have been leaning upon the
Yeah.
wisdom of astrology for many, many years. And so, and I forgot where I saw this quote online, but it says that millionaires and billionaires have a personal astrologer.
It's true though.
Okay.
It is
Yeah.
true.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And And it's very personalized, right? I know like there's a lot of skepticism around astrology because I think I'm not sure your age group, but I'm turning 40 in a few months. And I think, back in the day when, those monthly fashion magazines and
Oh
newspaper
yeah,
had the weekly
totally.
astrology, it didn't really hit the spot. And right,
Hmm.
you need to look at your personal chart because that's your sun sign, which is your zodiac, is the only one aspect, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know. When I look back at this past year and all the major planet alignment dates and check, because I'm an avid calendar person, I'm kind of a type A. And so I looked back and I was like, oh my gosh, yeah, this planet was here, and that day I did this, and your brain just goes like, wow, that is amazing. And I
Absolutely.
don't know, I've always been a avid believer of something greater than us outside of us, right? So, yeah.
So I'm turning 40 this Saturday, November 9. It's a big yeah, I know. So exciting.
Yay!
It took me a while to like be happy about it. Um, the thing with astrology for me, for a while I used to be quite afraid of it because I felt like it would like condition my mind, and kind of like precondition you to what was happening. And then I actually got re-pulled back into it a little bit, but with a different perspective through Vedic astrology. So I have an excellent Vedic astrologer. Her name is Sarah Black, who's also like my one of my mentors for Himalayan breathwork. And her approach is like quite incredible in terms of like how it basically influences your different houses and different aspects of your life depending on your chart. So it's more of like a global perspective and how certain planets will affect you in certain ways. So it's like really refined, right? So what I do now is I try as best as I can to be as intuitive as possible. So like to really be aware of the subtle shifts in energy around me. And then when I have a bit of a doubt, then I will go and consult the chart and be like, okay, this is happening. So this is how I need to manage it and use the different tools that I have. Is that breath work? Is that meditation? Like there was a time in March where like Mars was like really quite fiery. I had so much like fiery energy happening inside of me, and I had to do all these like different types of like more energetic exercises, more energetic breath work to kind of like channel that warrior energy into like good rather than like rage. So I see it more in a different way as like kind of like, okay, this is kind of like happening. Let's look at what's happening so that I can have these different practices to help me balance those energies, right? Like when I'm super moon sensitive. So my chart, basically the only thing above the horizon is the moon and Rahu. So like the moon is that's my home. But when the moon is very strong and powerful, it also makes me very like, kind of moody and like can sink into the darkness. So just being aware of that and what I need to do to counterbalance that. Because in the end, it's all about balance, right? When one energy is like either too much fire, then you kind of want to balance it with like a bit of like cool, calm energy. And there are all these practices that you can do to balance that. So that's how I see astrology. And obviously there are certain dates that are um just in general, much more auspicious that you can really feel that and because other people are feeling it too, that also amplifies that energy. So I don't necessarily um plan my life around it. I don't do like yearly readings. It stresses me out because I don't want to be like preconditioned. It's still like I'm like, okay, I don't want to like over because I'm not a type A person, but I use it more of like let's be intuitive. Like I want the universe to surprise me and channel and hone my own deep sort of connection with these energies so that I could feel it and then adjust accordingly. So that's kind of like how I see it personally. And I think that appeals as well to like some people who are just, not the planners. Although I have friends who are like super like JJ or who have like quite a strong like Capricorn side. Like I have zero Capricorn. I'm all like water and air. The idea of planning ahead, of being able to like map out those good dates, those, difficult things to watch out for, like that really appeals to him. So yeah, I mean, it's fun too, like it's less about like what your personality is, but really like what are the energies that arise in the time of your life at that moment, right?
Absolutely. And I think it's beautiful that you shared that. And that's the beauty of astrology, right? It's a tool that everyone gets to connect and integrate with in a way that feels best and most aligned for them, right? Everyone uses astrology in a different way. And there's so many types of astrology, right? And so I think what's most important is always, if you do want to learn more about it, to find a of astrology that feels most resonant to you and
Mhm.
supportive for you in whichever way you feel you, right? So for me, I'm an Aries. I have a lot of Aries and air in my chart. And so I'm always like, yeah, I want to go, I want to keep going. I want to keep going. I want to do this. I need to be really conscious of like, okay, when are my slower months? So I know
Mm.
when I can be in creation mode and launch and rest periods, because if I don't put in that rest period for me, I just keep going and I just don't want to burn out. You know what I mean? So there's so many beautiful things in astrology. And I also love that like your own birth chart is like a snapshot of how the planets and stars landed and aligned on the day of your birth, right? And it's also a tool for those who want to lean into astrology to understand you on a deeper level, right? Like, yes, your personality, why and how you communicate the way you communicate, how you interact in, your career space versus your relationships versus your family space, your values around, finances, et cetera, et cetera. What countries or ley lines are best for you
Yeah.
for certain things to activate deeper, and there's just so much wisdom and gems hidden in all of these charts that we have, right? And so yeah, I think it's beautiful. And no matter how many years you've been doing it, there's always more to learn, and to kind of continue on what you energies that come in for those of us who have our own healing practice or, daily practice. The more attuned you are with your energies, the quicker you actually receive the energy. So, for instance, let's just say there's a big planetary shift in 1 week, right?
Mhm.
Most of the collective may feel it like on the day when it happens, but for those of you who are more attuned or have been practicing for a while, we might feel it a few days ahead. So it's
Yeah.
kind of like feeling the first wave before everyone else.
Hmm.
And then, like you said, checking the alignments and charts and being like, okay, yep, this is what I was feeling. All right, it's coming. Like,
So, I think what's really great, what you've sort of
cool.
outlined for people here is that, um, when you look at astrology in a sort of different light, a different perspective. Like it's more empowering rather than inhibiting, right? Like using it as a tool to be more expansive for your growth rather than inhibiting you, like, can't do this, this is bad, you could only, right? So it's really just shifting your perspective. And then at the end of the day,
Exactly.
it's like
Yeah,
you're still the master of your destiny, right? You still have those choices that you
absolutely.
can make, that you can help shift. And this is what I want to stress to the audience out there. Guys, you have the power to shift that energy, right? You don't have to just be on the receiving end, right? So if you are aware, then you actually have the power to like rechannel it or shift it with different practices, that whether that's movement, whether that's breath work, whether that's meditation, like you have the power to shift. Like, and that's what's so beautiful. Like when you are suddenly conscious and awakened, then you're not just you don't just take it like a slap in the face, like you're not just a rock like taking in the waves. You can actually, help change the course of that flow for yourself when you're aware, right? So that's what I find quite beautiful. And that's what really changed everything for me about astrology, even about Mercury retrograde. How can I make this work for me? It sounds scary and all doomsday, but yeah, I can make this work for me, right? So
Just to kind of add to that, I totally agree with you. Like, we're not just here in this lifetime to experience life, right? We are co-creating this experience with ourselves and spirit, right? And so, the something that I share in my Akashic Records training is that we all have free will, and each and
yeah,
every day, every next minute, we have a new choice point to make a different decision.
absolutely.
We can decide to make a higher vibrational decision or a lower vibrational decision. And that will then open up different timelines for us, right? So, yeah, I completely agree with what you just shared.
Yeah, and I think like again, different modalities. And this is what I love about human design, which kind of like digests everything as well. So guys, if you haven't listened yet, we have a podcast with Bianca Bradner, who is talks all about human design and how we manage our energies, and we'll break it down for you. But thank you so much, Coco. This has been such a like wonderful and enlightening chat, and I hope people will like change the way they think about Mercury retrograde. So like let's and astrology in general. So let's kind of like sum up our conversation here with just, maybe like a message or a few tips for people that they can do right now, because I'm going to release this. This is going to be in the height of Mercury retrograde. If you guys are feeling stressed and whatever, what can you do right now? What can we do to, shift our perspective and our energy on this?
Just remember that you have the power to decide to be on the offense or defense of Mercury retrograde, right? This is really a time to review, reassess, realign, take a step back, slow down a bit, and when things don't go your way, it's okay. Give yourself some grace and pivot. I think pivoting is a really good word to keep in mind during Mercury retrograde. Back up your devices, make sure that you think before you speak, and always just leave some buffer time when you're traveling from point A to point B or even going on a holiday.
I love that. Thank you so much. And I guess for me, it's just really breathe. Take time to take a breath. I know it's the end of the year. We are powering through work. We are powering through like all the holiday festivities. We are just trying to get through our Christmas list and shopping. And it's like chaos. And then suddenly the kids are out of school and you don't know what to do with them. I mean, it's a lot. So take a moment to breathe so that you can be in control, like what Coco said, rather than being on the defense, be on the offense. Take a moment to pause and kind of like plan your day, fill your cup. So, you're not getting tapped out or beaten down by all the crazy frenetic energy. So, yeah, thank you so
Yes.
much, Coco. This has been great. We hope to have you on again next time there's another crazy planetary event. Maybe at the beginning of the year would be amazing. But thank you so much for your time and for your insight and your wisdom.
Thank you so much for having me. I hope that was helpful for your audience, and this was so much fun.
Thank you. Thank you guys for listening. This has been another episode of Soulful Feast, bite-sized information to nourish your body, mind, and spirit. I'm your host, Stephanie Zubiri. And again, pause, take a breath. It's not scary. You've got everything you need. The universe has your back.